Welcome to Discograffiti's 2025 Patreon membership super drive. Now more than ever with our Beach Boys series underway, much of which will be living exclusively on our Patreon platform, this is the time to join, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. At the lieutenant or major tier, in addition to 3 or 4 shows a week, access to the gigantic archive of Patreon back episodes, and your backstage pass, you'll also get the following: an onboarding call with me during which you'll tell me all your ideas on how to make the podcast you'd like to hear. And whether I use all, some, or none of your ideas, I'll have listened closely and most importantly, gotten to know you. Plus, 3 months into your membership, you'll be eligible to appear on the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's right, an entire episode all about you, your band, your band's album, your band's tour, or whatever other cool stuff you might be up to. And not only do we make the episode, we promote it for you too. Last but not least, you'll receive a completely free digital copy of Metal Machine Muzak, which otherwise costs $11. Metal Machine Muzak is Discograffiti's double album Lou Reed tribute featuring 16-minute pieces by Lou Barlow from Sebadoh and Dino Jr., Corey Hansen from Wand, Mark Robinson from Unrest, and W. Cullen Hart from Olivia Tremor Control. Please tell all your music-obsessive friends. In fact, if your friends do sign up, be sure to email me at info@discograffiti.com and let me know who they are, because I'll be sending you an additional surprise gift on top of everything else as a token of my gratitude. And now, without further ado, the greatest music commentary podcast in all the land, I bring you Discograffiti.
Anybody can guess and speculate what the fuck happened, but unless you were there, shut the fuck up. Shut your fucking mouth if you were not there. And if you were there, then you saw. And that's a very limited amount of people. They're either dead or they're quiet or whatever.
Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series and Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 45 top-shelf guests, ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to Jeff McAvoy and especially co-producer Dennis Dyken, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Carnie Wilson. Psst. This is part 2 of the longest interview Carnie Wilson's ever given, and on a subject she rarely speaks about, her father's band. She picked her 7 favorite Beach Boys releases, plus 1 solo, which taken together forms a patchwork quilt that defines the essence of Dad as she knows him. Keep in mind, more than 50% of Discograffiti's Beach Boys series will be available exclusively on our Patreon platform, as I support a wife and a 6-year-old son with Discograffiti as my sole source of income. So if you're not a subscriber on the lieutenant or major tier, you'll only be getting a fraction of the story. Here's just a few of the many things Carnie and I discuss in this podcast. What it was like living in Holland with her family in the early 1970s, how Carnie feels about Mike Love's demonized perception in the band, Brian's totally insane first anniversary gift to Marilyn, Carnie's amazing project with Dad that she wanted to produce, which he unfortunately rejected, and her feelings on Friends, Sunflower, Holland, and 15 Big Ones. If you're a Beach Boys superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features a veritable boatload of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the Lieutenant tier at the very least, so you can access those director's cuts, but the major tier is what you want if you want it all. And I'm covering a bunch of these Beach Boys records on the major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Al Jardine, Marilyn Wilson, Don Was, Ginger Blake, Pete Buck, Ira Kaplan from Yo La Tengo, The Cars' Elliot Easton, Sonic Boom, Don Fleming, Marshall Crenshaw, Lenny Kaye, The Righteous Brothers Bill Medley, Russ Titleman, Jerry Schilling, Greg Jacobson, Christian Love, Gary Griffin, David Beard, Probin Gregory, John Cowsill, David Leaf, Don Randy, John Stebbins, Rob Bonfilio, Wyatt Funderburk, Stephen Kalinich, Matt Jardine, Fred Vale, Sam Parker, Brent Wilson, Mark Lynette, Alan Boyd, Carly Minoz, and many more. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then. Okay, entering into, believe it or not, only album number 2, where you were almost 2 months old when it was released. Here's the quote. Bruce Johnston, 2007, Friends came out just after Hendrix and Cream. The whole country had discovered drugs, discovered words, discovered Marshall amplifiers, and here comes this feather floating through a wall of noise. So, tell me the importance of Friends besides the fact that it was being born right alongside you.
That's amazing, by the way. I can't believe that it was like the time that I was born. That's really great and amazing. Friends, there's just this little special compartment for Friends. God, I love that analogy of the feather. I think it's the most, innocent. Mm-hmm. I love the collaborations.
Friends, for the longest time, there was an element to it that I couldn't quite put my finger on that differentiated it. And then I realized that because Mike was away for a lot of it in India at the time, learning TM and really getting into it. There's an element to it where the bottom is taken out of it. So the lightness is really because it's not rooted. So it actually feels like it's pumped full of helium. There's such a treble heavy vibe to Friends, such a light airiness about it because Mike's not in it.
You're right. I mean, you could say about Pet Sounds, but really Friends, there was sort of a busting out for this light creativity, if you will, right? The lightness of it and the simplicity and certain instruments, on Friends and like the way, the sound of it sonically, there was something different. And Annalie the Healer, I never really listened to the lyrics of Friends. It took me decades, literally, to get into the lyrics of the Beach Boys. I was more drawn to the sound, the harmony, and the melody and the music. That's what has always drawn me to the Beach Boys, even more than the lyrics.
The word that you used, which I always think of in terms of Friends, is simplicity. But even though there is a lot of simplicity, I think in the emotional tone of the record, when you really look closer at it, songs like Busy Doing Nothing, it's not simple at all. I mean, that's a complicated track that kind of fools you into a simplicity because it feels offhanded, but it's very worked out. And Diamond Head is not simple. And Transcendental Meditation is so weird. Talk about a mood shatterer.
Right.
There's no song that shatters a mood quite like that one.
I know that. And when I first listened to it, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? But then it all worked together.
It does.
You accepted the dark parts and it was it's almost like Disney, I'm saying Disney because I do think he was very influenced by that.
I can hear that in this for sure.
There's that feeling and it's almost like this amusement park. You're on these rides where you're in the Matterhorn and you're in the cave and then you're out and you're in the brightness and then you're in a quick turn and then then there's water and then Be Here in the Morning. Oh my God. No calls from Korthoff. So Steve Korthoff was known for his laugh and we had so many fun times with Dennis up at the cabin in Big Bear. My Uncle Dennis had a cabin built for my grandma, and we used to go all the time. And they would go tobogganing, down that big hill. And fucking Steve Korthoff, he would let out this laugh. And they were probably so stoned, but we used to laugh so hard at his laugh. Steve brought a lot of joy A lot of joy to Carl and my dad. But Be Here in the Morning was just fabulous.
I'm curious, the fact that Friends peaked at number 126. So nobody's really paying attention at this point to the Beach Boys. Do you think that in some kind of ass backwards kind of way that it was freeing for your dad to be able to do all this shit, this crazy shit, while no one was listening?
Yes. Like I said, I just don't think he gave a shit. He had to express it. And I loved how silly he is. People are so like, they don't understand the depth of the Beach Boys. So they're either like surfing or, with God only knows or something. But there's all this music in between where there's like this darkness and light, silliness and childlike stuff. Like it's been such a long day, so you better be home. Yeah. Like what? Why are you doing that? Why do you do that?
Well, it's like she's going bald. And it's a lot of work that you did with Al, going on the road with Al and resurrecting these tracks that are crucial for people to recognize are really the beating heart of the band.
Yes. I mean, I love Breakaway so much. Oh my God. Al's voice. Oh, just love Al's voice so much. And so does Dad still to this day. I think honestly that Dad is heartbroken that he doesn't sing anymore. He doesn't sing. He just says, just little words. And he's just more quiet today. He's just a lot more quiet, but not quiet in his head.
He doesn't sing at all?
He sings a little bit, but I think he has chosen to be more quiet for many years. I think he's tired. He's not lazy, but it's like if he doesn't feel like it, he's just not going to do it. Right. And, it's funny because I asked him, maybe it was like 15 years ago. I don't know, maybe a decade ago. I called him up one day and I said, hey, Dad, I have an idea. This is when I found out that he loved Frank Sinatra. I said, Daddy, I have this vision. I want to record an album of Frank Sinatra songs and I want you to do it. And I want you to put all your background vocals and your interpretation of Brian Wilson's harmony, oohs and ahs underneath Frank's songs, and I want to produce it. And he goes, let me call you right back and I'll give you my answer. I hung up the phone, and I'm not fucking kidding you. It was 2 seconds later, the phone rang. And I go, hello? And he goes, Carnie, my answer is no. And I said, why? Tell me why. And he goes, there's only one Frank Sinatra, and that's it. And I said, I understand that, but you understand that I'm thinking like it's your interpretation and there's only one Brian Wilson. I don't care. That's my answer. So I said, okay. And then I tried later to ask him if he would record something stupid because I think that would have been a really nice.
Oh, that would be perfect.
It would have been great. Yeah. But I heard all these, when I was 17, it was a very good year. I was hearing all of his harmonies over that. I was hearing him doing some really badass shit with that, but it never happened.
That would have been incredible. It really would have.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff that I know he's talked into to do, it's too bad that idea wasn't utilized.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were forces shutting that down, truthfully, but we won't go there. But busy doing nothing when I'm hearing my mom and Diane singing on the background vocals. I wrote a number down, but I lost it. And then I said, slowly it came to me. If you listen carefully, you'll hear Diana, my mom. It's so cool. But I do remember like trying to visualize, all right, is that my street, Bellagio Road they're talking about?
Again, a brilliant dichotomy, because from what I understand, one of the reasons that your mom pushed for this move to Bel Air was to shake the people like Lauren Schwartz and Michael Vossi and that group that she apparently felt was draining him. And so moved to this place behind a big wall and a gate. And then he goes on the next record and gives directions on how to get to the house.
That's so funny. Well, I remember he painted Bellagio a really weird color. He painted it like purple. He had the house painted like a bright purple, and Mom just said, that's so ugly. I mean, here's this neighborhood, the Rams owners next to us and all these people, and these beautiful homes, and he paints it like this disgusting purple. And so she had to take that down. But did you know that my dad, his first anniversary gift to my mom was a chimp?
Was it really?
Yeah.
Back in 65?
Yeah, he got her a chimpanzee as a present.
I had no idea. What happened to the chimp?
The chimp bit his finger and it freaked him out and he got rid of the chimp like the next day.
Wow.
This is the watch that my dad gave to my mom. It was the first present he ever gave to her. It's a Tiffany Rolex. I love wearing this. It means a lot to me. It's because it's the first thing he ever gave to her, jewelry-wise.
When was that? Was that 64 or 63?
No, it was later. It was the first jewelry piece he gave to her. So I think it was later. It was more like 69, I think. Yeah, I wore it for the interview. I like to have it on me.
What are your thoughts? Because this happened when you were literally days old. The Maharishi tour started on May 3rd, 1968. You were 4 days old when that tour started. Obviously you have no memories of it, but that time was just about the most fraught time in Beach Boys history. And in the list of shows that I would give a limb to go back in time and see, that would be in the top 3 for me. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that time period where they're having the Maharishi literally speak? And by the way, this was their idea to recuperate money that was lost in a tour that preceded this.
I just think it was very Mike influence, and this is what Mike wanted. Yeah. You know, it's just what Mike wanted. I don't remember any of it, but I just remember growing up and seeing pictures. It felt like an invasion. It just was an invasion and a diversion. And it was, to me, it was just totally weird and unnecessary, but it wasn't to them. It was what they wanted to do. I mean, it's hard, being in a group is hard because everybody's got to be on the same page, but nobody ever is. And you've got to compromise and come to an agreement. And it's just so goddamn hard. That's why bands break up. You just can't always agree. And then, people get pissed and they don't forgive and they can't come to some kind of settling. They just can't.
1968 was the big year for Democracy to really come into the group. It was the year when, especially Friends, when the 6 of them became kind of a group instead of, all the stuff that Derek Taylor did in trying to push the idea that Brian was a genius and the idea that everyone else was Brian's puppets.
Right. But what's hard is that it's almost like you can't shut down what's obvious, but you also have to celebrate all of it. And I think that Carl and Dennis and Mike in particular just felt that they just were being ignored. But at the same time, Dad was creating things that deserved the attention and was propelling them and expanding all their music. I think nobody was even prepared for some of this stuff.
Carl was coming to his own. Dennis, out of nowhere, was started to become like a volcano of artistic inspiration. Ooh, and of course, peaking in 77 with Pacific Ocean Blue. But Mike Love, taking it one step beyond that, wasn't just overlooked, but he became demonized and became, in true heroes and villain style, he really became the bad guy. How do you feel about him being demonized for the fucking with the formula thing and, wanting to stick in a very narrow lane? Do you think that's unfair or earned? Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show-per-week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti. He really became the bad guy. How do you feel about him being demonized for the fucking with the formula thing and, wanting to stick in a very narrow lane? Do you think that's unfair or earned?
I can never speak or feel for him because I really do think that he had integrity. Mike had integrity and love for his cousins, for the group, for the sound. And I also think that he was stubborn. And I think Dad was stubborn. And I think all of them were. Carl was not, but he was strong and protective. But I don't think he was as stubborn. I don't think Mike was as open-minded as he maybe wanted to be. Maybe it was his own fear. I think it was his own fear. Because it's like, what's the expression? If it's broke, don't fix it, right? If it ain't broke, if it ain't broke. So like maybe he just was intimidated. Like maybe, and this is all just speculating, maybe he felt inside, I can't go deeper in my own creativity. I don't want this person to be more creative than I am. Here we got all these things. We're co-writers, we're collaborators. It's working. It's good. And then you want to go down this path. Why do you want to do that? Maybe he felt like he couldn't contribute to that. When I hear records like Friends, it's like, well, your stamp is not meant to be plastered everywhere. That's one other facet of the Beach Boys. I mean, when I hear Airplane, Dad wrote Airplane, but I think of Mike because I think of his Over the City in an Airplane. I hear him singing that and I think of Mike.
Yeah.
And so I feel like everybody got so wrapped up in what's your role? What's your role? This is your role. This is your role. Oh, you're more important. No, I'm more important. No, I did this. No, you did this. It's so hard to not do that. It's hard to not do that when you're in a group. I wanted to go back. I also thought it was really funny that Meant for You, like it was the shortest song I'd ever heard. I wanted to hear more. Like why? Why did you end so quickly?
Have you heard the longer version?
No.
I'll send it to you. There's a version that's a couple minutes long, and there's a whole section about a puppy and a pony.
There's a delicateness in the vocals on Friends. There's like this delicate, beautiful vulnerability and beautiful, it's light, but it's delicate and it's sweet. And also Friends is very, very, very meaningful to me because I didn't know that when I met my husband, Rob, his favorite Beach Boy album is Friends, or one of his favorites. And we bonded over listening to Friends. So we would listen to Friends together, and I couldn't believe that he knew Friends and he loved Friends.
All right, album number 3, you were 2 years old, Sunflower, 1970. So yeah. Carl said that year, Sunflower is the truest group effort we'd ever had. Each of us was deeply involved in the creation of almost all the cuts. Someone would come down to the studio early and put down a basic track, and then someone else would arrive and think of a good line or overdub. This album to me is so amazing. It's kind of a miracle because more so even than Friends, nobody was listening. Looking back, it seems like 69 into 70 was the most difficult year for the Beach Boys. This album was rejected over and over and over again. That's one of the reasons why there is so much material from this time, because they kept having to take songs off, put new ones on, take stuff off. But yet, oddly, it really, and is considered to be, it is a masterpiece. And you really get that sense of a democracy by this point. It's not just an intimation of democracy. There's such a wild, lurching, almost whiplash kind of intensiveness about where you're going musically from track to track.
Yes. I also think it was like Bruce Johnson's sort of intro.
Right.
You really feel his presence on this record. And I think that makes it special too. I knew This Whole World, my mom's version, before I knew the Beach Boys. I grew up listening to her Spring, and that's the version I fell in love with. By the way, Spring is one of my favorite albums of all time, and one of Carl's favorite albums of all time, and Dad. That album, oh, fuck, that's a real whopper. But This Whole World, I can't believe that song. You would picture him up at night thinking about, it's kind of like Love and Mercy, you know what I mean? It's got that same, I'm here by myself and I'm pondering, why this, why that? why are we here? What's up with people? But it always came down to love and just how we're all different, but the common denominator is love and music. So deep. Carl was right. It was so collaborative, and it was only fair that everybody else got to really contribute, and add some music to your day is so fucking precious.
It's so great.
God damn it. A tiny bit quirky.
It sounds like an advertisement for music as an idea, which is so weird. I mean, the concept of that being odd in itself, it's beautiful. It really is. It's so innocent.
You'd hear these arrangements, dum, 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 doo. Then all of a sudden you'd hear the harmonies come in. It's almost like, oh, there's the relief. There's the familiarity of the Beach Boys harmonies. They were able to sort of pivot and then come back to their signature sound, which I think is really cool, the way they would integrate certain things. And that is part of that collaborative effort.
And then going from that to Got to Know the Woman, which feels to me like if Santana did porn music.
This was one that I would skip over.
It's always been one of my least favorite Dennis songs.
Yeah.
But I love that, again, when I'm talking about that Whiplash thing, to go from add some music to your day to that.
Yes, to that.
Yeah.
That's just what I appreciated, that was the collective music that made the whole album great. Every song is brilliant in its own way. And I believe that about every single Beach Boys album. I just do. Because you think about like Whitney Houston, she didn't write. Linda Ronstadt, they didn't write.
Right.
They
Yeah.
were singers. Joni Mitchell was writing and singing. So it's almost like I depended on the voice of Linda and Whitney, but I depended on Carl, his voice and his lyrics and his melody. I depended on Dad the same. I depended on Mike and Dennis and Al. It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And Mike here is, I think, just about as emotionally moving as he's ever been. With All I Want to Do, I think, is one of the greatest songs that people don't really talk about as a deep album cut. This is actually given credit for being a progenitor of dream pop or chill wave. It's a very simple, very, very moving song, and it's one of my top 3 Mike vocals ever.
It was the reverb on his voice, sort of Lucy in the Sky-ish, it had a little Beatle-y thing to it. And I'm appreciative of that because it gave him a little bit of a new platform there. I love that there is a vulnerability in his vocal on this song that's just like, oh, I'm so glad I got to hear this side of Mike.
He did some stuff around this time also with Charles Lloyd, the saxophonist. I don't know if you heard the records Waves or Warm Waters. Your dad was involved too on those records. A bunch of the guys were. Carl, Al. Some of the stuff that they did is very surprisingly moving, especially Mike. There's a song called How Sweet. It's transportative in a way that I feel like Mike would not allow himself to go there on some of the Beach Boys records, except for All I Want to Do. I think maybe if he had allowed himself to express more of the vulnerability that you hear in a song like this, then maybe people wouldn't have possibly misunderstood his intentions.
I don't know. I feel like TM really wasn't a good idea for him because I think it suppressed a lot of shit that I think it suppressed him. And I think that he was not more volatile, but more creative than he allowed himself to be. An extremely talented person and a great singer, a great sound, and a great frontman, a great performer. And I feel bad. I feel bad because I do think there, over the years, has been anger in him. He was angry at Dennis. He was angry at, I don't know, that was his own thing. But I think now he has released. I've seen a change in him. All the lawsuits and all the shit they sued. It's just
so much.
So unfortunate. And I think that at this point he has let go and realized that family, music, that was the most important thing. And I think he feels like he wishes he could take back some stuff,
When did you start noticing that change?
Probably around 3 or 4 years ago.
With family being so intermingled with business, Are there family get-togethers just over the holidays and things, or is that kind of skipped over because of the band?
Well, I mean, me and my dad, yeah, my family, my dad's family, yeah, but not
Yeah.
with Mike or anyone. They
Right.
don't get together, no. But, I mean, just for years, there was that tension. And I feel like it's just giving negative energy. It's not even worth talking about because I've never been involved in that. And I've always said that's never been my involvement. But I understand that there are feelings. There are people that come with their own thoughts, their own purpose, and their own story. Everyone's got their own story. And I think because they're family, that made it very hard because they felt certain things they felt so strongly about and they were adamant about. And there was a lot of miscommunication. And I don't know if jealousy is the right word, but I just think there was tension and influencing. There's influences, outside influence, so much outside influence from all parties, all people, just going from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s and to now. Everything is so different. And to navigate all the feelings and go through all that shit, at the end of the day, they're all human. And I just can't get mad. I don't want to believe that money was ever the driving force. And I really don't think it ever was. I don't believe money was ever it. I think it was a personal thing in their hearts. And I believe that we all have to give each other grace and have some mercy.
No, I agree. But also, it's hard to forget that on Mike Love's first marriage certificate for occupation, he wrote gas station attendant. And so this is a guy who, life is scary. I mean, to think that during the making of Sunflower, when the record's getting rejected over and over and over again, I know for me, what if I have to go back and pump gas? Who the fuck would want to backslide that far? I'd be really afraid. I would be. I mean, we're human beings. And, when we're laying in bed, tossing and turning, we all kind of come back to the same types of troubling things that keep us awake.
I know. And it's one of the things that I think all artists have to face. It's like you have your own creativity that you want to express, and it's inside of you. And however it comes out, whatever the catalyst is that makes you get to that point where you're able to express it, whether it's through a song, a melody, a lyric, an artist has to get it out. They have to express it. And then there's that other part that's sort of ingrained in our head, and that comes from record executives and record companies and the industry and Grammys and awards and accolades and all that shit that just totally go against the true art, in my opinion.
You experienced it firsthand.
I have. And the Beach Boys never won a Grammy, right?
I don't think so.
No.
That's amazing. You know what? I never pondered that. That's unbelievable.
I know that. And I'm kind of glad they didn't. And it just goes to fucking show you.
Yeah.
It's not the point. There's a part on Dad, I think it's his solo album, the very end, there's like a hidden track, and he talks about the reason that he makes music and the purpose of it. He says something like, it's a gift. I wrote it down. It was absolutely beautiful, and I had never heard him say it. But he said, it's all in the giving, no rewards. The music is the ultimate gift.
Yeah.
That's what people should be focusing on when they think about Brian Wilson, is that he never did it to get an award.
He had to. I mean, with your dad, it's clear. I think Mike has a talent. The lyrics that he wrote, for people who don't get it, for people who don't understand, those early songs especially, I Get Around and Surfing USA, and a lot of those songs where it seems a lot simpler than it is, if it wasn't for Mike, it would not have been nearly the same.
I know that.
But I think if Mike had never met your dad, I don't think there would have been a burning fire inside Mike to communicate himself. I don't think it's the same kind of thing.
No, I agree.
Your dad had no choice.
I don't like to tap into negativity. So when I would think of Mike saying, I wrote that, I deserve that recognition, or Dad going, no, I did that, no, I did that, and then there was this fight, and then there's this and that, it feels toxic and sad. And this is what I say, and my mom always says this to me. Anybody can guess and speculate what the fuck happened. But unless you were there, shut the fuck up. Shut your fucking mouth if you were not there. And if you were there, then you saw. And that's a very limited amount of people. They're either dead or they're quiet or whatever.
This actually was the time period because we're talking about Sunflower, and it was in 1969 that Murray sold Sea of Tunes, which begat all this stuff because Mike's name is not attached to a whole slew of songs that he apparently co-wrote.
And that's not fair.
Right.
Would he really just make that shit up? I don't think so.
That's doubtful. Yeah.
It's doubtful, but then again, it's like when you have a group so massive and so many songs and such a massive catalog and, every direction, everything, it's like you can't keep up with everything. They were moving too fast for themselves. We always have to go back to the music. You'll always have distractions. You'll always have people that are angry, disappointed, feeling like they were cheated or whatever. Yes, but let's just go back to the music. Like, I don't like talking about that stuff. I want to go back to the music. Like Our Sweet Love and Forever.
When you think of Dennis, is that the first song that you think of when you see your uncle?
No, I think of Be Still and Mona.
Mona, yeah.
Honking on the Highway. His vocal on that made me laugh.
I know you're going to love Phil Spector.
Forever is the best song he ever wrote, I think. It's just so beautiful. Why is he not recognized as a better writer than people think or know? And also my memories of Dennis, going up on the stage when he would walk out and the girls would scream and he would sing You Are So Beautiful. Because I remember being on the road with them when I was a little girl during the summertime. And my favorite thing to do was introduce them, on stage. And so I remember being at the Forum and Carl would say to me, okay, you're going to go out there and you're going to say, are you ready? Crowd's going to go, yeah. And then you're going to say again, are you ready? Yeah. Please welcome from Southern California, the Beach Boys. Those are my exact lines, verbatim.
This is like mid-70s?
No, this was later. This was like
it was? Okay.
1978. Okay. I was probably 10. And I wore my Corky's heels and I had my hair and I would walk out all by myself at the Forum. And I just will never forget introducing them and what that felt like. I loved when that crowd was screaming. Just being on stage as a little girl and hearing San Diego. I have pictures of it. The first time I ever sang, with Wendy and Justin. And we would beg Uncle Carl, because Carl always ran the ship. He always did. And so we would beg Uncle Carl, please, can we sing, please? He'd go, okay, you can come out on Good Vibrations. And when you start hearing, gotta keep those love good vibrations happening with it, that's your cue. And so we'd come out when the organ would start and we would go, gotta keep those love good vibrations. And they would extend it and let us sing, let us keep singing. And it was so fun. And then we'd get off the stage. We were like racehorses ready to run out and sing. And then we would come back for Surfing USA and then fun.
Is that where you got the bug?
That was where I got the bug. I mean, it was actually in school, in high school and junior high, I started acting. I loved being in the plays and I loved making the audience laugh or cry or do whatever. And then it became more about singing and harmony. And harmony was it. And I would get everybody together. In the 8th grade, I hated school. I fucking hated it. I just wanted to sing harmony. So I would beg all my friends during our recesses, in our breaks. I'd get everybody around the picnic benches and we would sing Peaceful Easy Feeling and Dreams. It was all about the Eagles, really. That's what got me. Yeah. But back to Sunflower, another song that I love, Our Sweet Love, I love so much.
How about Cool Cool Water?
It has a big Carl vibe, It's got the big Carl vibe.
This is one of the Smile pieces that got finished up.
Yes. And there's something hypnotic about it. That's one of the things about Dad and Carl, I think, but more Dad. I just remember Dad would obsessively play certain riffs on the piano. He was very influenced by Jerry Lee Lewis and Chuck Berry, but he did this one riff all the time. And I think it was the ding dang. It was like, ding, ding, ding,
I was just going to ask you. I was just going to ask you about Shortening Bread and Ding Dang. Talk to me about Shortening Bread. I know we're not there yet, but I got to know, what is the deal with your dad's obsession with Shortening Bread?
I don't know. It's the riffs.
Yeah.
It's the riffs, because a riff repeats itself, right?
The one that does it for me? I cannot get enough of it. If it was 2 hours long, it wouldn't be long enough. Can't Wait Too Long. Do you know
what is that?
It's from 1968. It's called Can't Wait Too Long. It came at the tag end of the Smile period. Listen to it.
This part gets me. The note. motherfucker.
What he was doing at that time, during that period, when he
Yes.
was composing in feels.
Yeah.
So he would have sections that acted as jigsaw puzzle pieces.
Yes.
He'd snap them together and create songs. And Ding Dang, which, the mind blower to me about Ding Dang is that apparently for a long period of time, everyone got pulled into the Ding Dang, which also was called clangin' at one point, apparently. And there's a ton of Ding Dang stuff in the vaults.
You have to understand that was my childhood. Hearing these riffs on the piano and these little taggy things and these little pieces like the jigsaw. I grew up hearing this, waking up to it, going to sleep, and that's what I heard.
So when you were little, I could see somebody with one kind of mindset or brain being driven crazy by that. Like somebody who has to listen to Be My Baby 500 times a day when they're not a Phil Spector fan.
Right.
How did you take to hearing Ding Dang 1,000 times?
The thing that was hard was like when I was trying to watch Mr. Rogers or HR Puff and stuff, and I'd be in the living room, which is where the big stereo was and, where his upright piano was, not his grand, but his upright. He loved that upright piano. It had a great sound and he loved to be on that one. And that's the piano that Paul McCartney and all of us sang together on. So it has a very special meaning to me. I don't know where that piano is. The other piano, is at my mom's house. The piano he wrote a lot of great stuff on. It's there. But I'd be watching TV and he would just be playing these and also like these rock and roll things.
Like boogie woogie type stuff?
Yeah, boogie woogie type stuff. And my best friend Tiffany, who's still my best friend, we would go, Dad, and he wouldn't listen. He still played. Dad, he would turn around and go, what? And we would go, can you please? We're trying to watch TV. Okay. And then he'd go right back and then he'd like, never listen. He just kept going. And then he would get up, walk around the house, do some thinking. Who knows? Maybe he was writing a song. Who knows what he was doing? Then he'd come back to the piano and he would just play this riff. And it's like, I never heard him write a song. I've never heard him write a song. I've only heard those rock and roll and those riffs that he would play.
So was there a particular loop that drove you batty? This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. So was there a particular loop that drove you batty?
Yeah, it was. And there were other ones too. I'm blanking. Oh, he played Rhapsody in Blue. Be My Baby, that, and Rhapsody in Blue. But Rhapsody in Blue was constant. It was at least 50 times a day. And one day he taught it. He taught it to me years and years later after they got divorced. The same time he taught me the intro of California Girls and Sloop John B. I made him, he'd go, you have to spread your fingers real wide here. And he would taught me, Rhapsody in Blue. He also did, in the Still of the Night, there was some like Shut Up, Shooby-Doo, like that kind of thing. He did a lot of like doo-wop stuff too on the piano. He did a lot of doo-wop stuff, which I never liked.
So album number 4, you were 4 years old, just about to turn 5. Here's a quote from Al Jardine. It was rough being in Holland. We were working 24/7 in a small, homemade, rebuilt, piecemeal little studio in a garage next to a cow pasture. Yeah, it was rough. So tell me about your time in, I think the place was called Laren.
Yeah.
So it was yourself, your mom, Wendy, your dad, Diane, and a housekeeper. It took 3 attempts for your dad to successfully get on the flight from LA to Amsterdam. What was that time like for you? What are your memories of being in Holland during that time?
Well, I don't remember flying there. I don't remember going there, but I was 4.5 or 5, right?
Yeah.
I think it was part of kindergarten. Jonah and I, Carl's son Jonah, went to school there. I remember the classroom feeling really out of place. I remember some of the house and feeding the horses apples and them taking the apples from my hand, and the little hairs on their little mouth and their lips were really soft. And I just remember that feeling, them taking the apples, really gentle. But I do remember that Wendy, this was another moment that Dad came to the rescue for little Wen. We drew the bath at night, and it was scalding hot water. It was only hot water, and it was really hot. And she put her little foot into the bathtub and screamed hysterically. Her foot and ankle were instantly red and purple, and he pulled her out of it. And I have this memory of running down the hospital hallway with my dad, with Wendy in his arms. And I'm sure it was really hard for him, but that was like great for me to see my dad once again being a hero. You know, that's a memory of Holland, but I don't have many memories of Holland at all. I don't remember being in the studio.
Do you remember Randy Newman's Sail Away? Because apparently that was playing on a loop. Yeah. I love Holland, and I love Mount Vernon and Fairway. Apparently at that time, that was basically all he was working on was Mount Vernon and Fairway. He wasn't really working on the record. And in fact, Al said for, the California Saga, the end part, Al said, we came down to the studio to do a mix down so Brian could get home. Then suddenly he came in and said, give me a microphone. He walked straight in. I hadn't seen him for a month. He walked up to the microphone and started singing, I'm on my way to sunny California. He then left the microphone and walked out. But aside from that, he was basically piecing together Mount Vernon and Fairway, and he says that he could only get in that frame of mind to be able to create that if Randy Newman's Sail Away was on a perpetual loop. As long as he had that record going, he could create. And he was using your rubber stampers. You had like a set of rubber stampers to write that for whatever reason. And he was going to do a sequel to it that was going to be about you and Wendy. Do you know about the follow-up? So there was a proposed follow-up. There's a cassette tape that reveals your dad's plans for a second fairy tale. And the recording features your dad reciting a narrative about two young girls who get lost in the woods on their way to school. You and Wendy would have played the roles of the young girls over a cute musical track. That was the idea behind it.
This sounds familiar to me. Now that you're talking about it, there was mention of like playing a role of something. That just sounds familiar. That's such a trip.
Yeah. I mean, from a child's point of view, things are never really as they seem. But from your mom's point of view, this particular time, I'm only guessing, was probably a nightmare. It sounds like your dad was flying way off the rails at this time and was maybe a little chaotic.
It was, but there were certain songs that I chose this one, and I don't even know the whole album by heart, but there are certain songs that really got to me.
Which one?
The Traitor.
Traitor's one of the greatest Beach Boys songs of all time.
Ever. And Jonah going, hi.
Yep.
Jonah's high in the beginning. I can't even. And it makes me so happy. But Traitor, that was the first time I gained a lot of respect for Carl. And then I fell in love with his songwriting. Oh, God, he was a great writer. God damn it. I just, we were very close to him. And for many years after he died, I spent a lot of time crying, and like during hard times, I would call out to Carl and he would like send signs. I mean, just through songs, through animals, I just feel like Carl is always listening. He's always listening and wants to make himself present, because I think he was so protective of our dad. There's just a big connection, but they're all sort of extensions of each other because they're brothers, but really Carl was an incredible songwriter in his own right. And Sail On Sailor also is, to me, in the top of Beach Boys songs.
Your dad doesn't like that song,
I just don't know
which
why.
Is amazing to me.
I'm not sure I believe him, by the way.
Here's a quote from your dad. It's the only song that we did that I absolutely do not like at all. I never liked Sail On Sailor.
I don't believe him. I don't believe him.
I love that song. The record is really interesting because, to be totally frank, I never really connected with side 2 nearly as much as with side 1.
I understand that.
Leaving This Town is not the greatest Beach Boys song.
And I'm the Pied Piper. I mean, it was terrifying for me as a child.
Really? How come?
It scared the shit out of me. I don't know what it was. And when he was talking, Magic Transistor Radio scared the shit out of me.
You mean just the Magic Transit?
Yes.
That part?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he would come out like he would do this book like like a fairy tale, but it was like a nightmare. It just scared me as a little girl. I didn't
understand. I could see that.
It didn't sound like music to me. It was just, and maybe it was just because it was such a dark time that this energy around it was very dark. But I chose this because Sail on Sailor and The Traitor to me were just, they also, the way they would go into each other, it was kind of like nothing worked together, but they all fed into each other. It's not that there was anger like in Pied Piper.
It's adults trying to force an innocence that's gone. I think that's what it probably is like, that ship has sailed so long ago. Plus, he's around you and Wendy. So it probably felt like he could get there osmotically just by being around you. But it didn't happen. But I think that's the key and the particular strange magic of Mount Vernon.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like they couldn't help that that's what was happening. And this is what came out of it. And it's not my favorite. But at the same time, there's gems. There's gems in every record. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz. They have to go through that dark forest to get to a better place. A more colorful place.
What's your take on Funky Pretty?
Oh, I loved that one. That was a cool record. Yeah,
that's an interesting one. Again, that's like when you're confronted with Holland, it is a very atypical experience for the Beach Boys.
It takes some patience and an open mind, and that's okay. And you don't have to like it, but there are some gems.
Do you have memories of Jack Riley? Do you have any memories of him?
Maybe one. Maybe it was in Holland. I don't remember.
He wound up taking them into some really interesting places. You probably know this, but they toyed with the idea of renaming the group Beach during this time. Yeah.
Wow.
But, Surf's Up and Holland, I have a soft spot for Carl and the Passions. But this was the end of Beach Boys Mach 1, because after this, once Endless Summer comes out, the exploratory nature, notwithstanding, of course, Love You, but the exploratory nature of the group coming together, those days were kind of gone because they were able to get back the success that eluded them for years. Yeah. And I don't think they were going to throw the dice again like that.
No, I don't think so.
Who could blame them? Who could blame them?
And who could blame them? But if you're a true Beach Boy fan, you will appreciate the twists and the turns. You'll appreciate the twists and the turns in the music.
Holland is incredible. It feels like the work of a different band. It does.
It does. But then there's that piano sound and like repetitive thing, trippy, sort of not hippie, but trippy.
There's a little bit of hippie stuff. There's the flutes on the California Saga.
Yes. And then there's just like weird, what's that? I think that's on Mount Vernon.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That like that thing. Why'd you put that in there?
Like a mechanical frog.
Yeah, mechanical frog. And it's like, holy shit, I remember listening as a little girl going, what is that? But I knew at that age, this is so unique. It's so unique. I would love to watch Paul McCartney listen to this album. I don't know. It's such a trip. But I honor all of it. I honor it, I honor it.
So album number 5, you were 8 years old. In a 1998 interview, your dad said that 15 Big Ones and Love You were his favorite Beach Boys albums. And he says, that's when it all happened for me. That's where my heart lies. All right, that about does it. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and my 6-year-old son. So don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member today by visiting patreon.com/Discograffiti. Stay tuned because next week we've got the incredible conclusion of our Carnie Wilson interview. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a 2-headed beast for the Beach Boys' 3rd album, Surfer Girl. Both producer-songwriter Russ Titleman, who wrote Guess I'm Dumb, was Brian Wilson's pal and confidant, and produced all the classic 1970s Randy Newman LPs and Brian Wilson's first solo album, and musician Jason Faulkner, not only Beck's guitarist, but he of the amazing Jellyfish, too. Both of these luminaries will be hashing it out on the Beach Boys' classic third LP, Surfer Girl. There'll be a short sneak peek running publicly for free, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of Part 3 of the Carnie Wilson Discograffiti interview. It's the show as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everybody else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful son Mason, Carnie Wilson, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, Joe Kennedy for that killer new theme song, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into classic rock and roll from the 1960s is to leap headfirst into the Righteous Brothers Bill Medley interview, that's 181 and 182, my interview with the Free Design, that's 160 to 162, my epic interview with the Mamas and Papas Michelle Phillips, that's 141 to 159, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, that's 137, my 12-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander from The Association, that's 109 to 113, Vashti Bunyan reading her entire output, that's 103 to 104, Sergio Diaz from Os Mutantes, that's 86 and 87, Bert Summer, that's 83 and 84, Sweetwater is episode 79, a tribute to David Crosby, 77 and 78, Andrew Tuttle rates the Monks, 74, Jim Florentine on Black Sabbath is 64 to 68, Lou Barlow on the Zombies is 59 and 60, Marvin Gaye biographer David Ritz rates Marvin Gaye, that's 45 to 47. Blind Faith is 43. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground is 32 and 33. Bob Forrest rates the band is 25 and 27. Monkees manager Andrew Sandoval rates the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy rates David Axelrod as 17. Badfinger is 16. The Bee Gees is 10 and 11. Sly and the Family Stone is 5, 6, and 7. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, February 7th, we're coming at you with Part 3, the exciting conclusion of our Carnie Wilson interview. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!